Hi everyone, welcome back to the Social Hotelier podcast with me, Sam-Erik Ruttmann. My guest today is Sarah Stahl, a marketing strategist who truly transforms chaos into clarity, fueled by iced coffee, sticky notes, and a sharp eye for Instagram analytics. Sarah is the creative force behind Market Mover's data-driven approach. With over 15 years in marketing, she has helped brands grow through storytelling, influencer partnership, and digital branding. In hospitality, Sarah is best known for her scaling of a retreat resort from 6 to 21 units, while achieving an extraordinary 93% direct bookings, an accomplishment most hotels only could dream of. A consultant, speaker, and a thought leader, Sarah empowers independent properties to thrive without online travel agents and build lasting guest connections. So, Sarah, welcome to the show, and really good to have you on this episode.
Thank you. So happy to be here and totally prepared with my iced coffee and sticky note to let everyone know to have a good day.
Well done. So, okay, well, let's get started. I think for the audience to get some background, can you tell me about how you got started and which led you eventually to become an inspiring marketing strategist?
Happy to. So I've been in marketing for about 15 years. I started as an entrepreneur. That was just a dream of mine, actually, since I was a little girl. But I realized really quickly as I was becoming an adult that it takes some skill to be able to build and run a successful business. So I went back to school, fell in love with marketing, and just the idea of using psychology to be able to sell things and build businesses. So I was a contractor for quite a bit, and then I landed a role as a tourism director in a small county in Northeast Alabama, which really got my feet wet in the tourism industry. I was there for about 3 years and learned quite a bit about the government side of things. And I realized I'm not crazy about the government side of tourism, although there are a lot of resources that short term rentals leave on the table, and we might get to that later. But an opportunity popped up a couple of years ago for a startup treehouse resort. And I'm a big hiker, big into the outdoors, love the tourism industry. I'm like, this could not be any more perfect. Um, Long story short, they hired me as the fourth employee. I was the head of marketing there, and really just had the opportunity in a small team with a very innovative owner to just explore what's possible in marketing without any training wheels or reins on at all, and just listening to our customers and doing the opposite of what everyone else was doing in the industry produced some pretty incredible results that I'm very proud of.
Very good. I mean, you're making a huge difference by working for an independent operator, independent owner, and while people say, "Oh, it's only 9 units," but it's not really only 9 units. It's basically you could have 100 units, and you still are having the same challenges. So
Yes.
I think we should not underestimate the impact you have had. What I'm looking at is that you have worked for an independent owner, and those can have its own challenges. So it has to do with developing relationships and align with the vision that the owner has, and also in the
Yes.
way uh, uh, get the results that the developer who's looking to make some profit on this venture and so on. So I think that's a fantastic achievement that you have had so
Thank
far, and I
you.
think it will go very far regardless of what you're going to do in the future. This is very, very clear to me, and because the challenges are the same regardless of the size of the operations. Won't you agree?
Yes, and so it's something I keep thinking of as you're speaking about that is the fact that we went from 6 units to 21, a spa, and an event venue. So we were actually in construction for 2 years with minimal interruption to the guest while pre-booking units as they were coming online. So, yeah, I've had other people tell me that, "Oh, you've only had this one success. I don't think you're quite ready to scale it elsewhere," and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but you cannot replicate that amount of chaos and then have results, such incredible results come from it and not have learned something massive to reapply elsewhere.
Yeah, and plus, plus you didn't have a corporate head office that's yeah, they're going to
Telling
send
us
you the support
anything.
when needed. You just have to look at in the mirror.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and, I mean, I've been I played the role of GM, operations manager, I've been a housekeeper, I've dealt with, fire safety, you name it, while marketing.
Very well.
Yeah.
Well, good. So I think we have. I was thinking about a few topics, and we start sort of with the one that is on everybody's lips because and nobody seemed to really get it. It's the AI. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI, and I noticed that you're pretty familiar with this. So I was wondering that how do you see AI reshaping the way independent hotels and resorts are discovered by travelers?
So I look at this very differently. So I'm just going to lay it out there exactly how I see it based off of results. So everyone has their own opinion based off of what that they've experienced, and this is mine. I do not see AI as let's talk about generative search. So how search is changing and the way we know search for since the internet started is about to completely disappear, right? So there's a lot of scrambling and fear and wondering what's going to happen. I actually am not afraid of that at all. Because the thing about it is Google is not going to fail. Right? So that's a thought that I had a couple months ago, like, why is everyone freaking out? Like, Google's 10 steps ahead of everybody. They have this bigger plan. They're 10 years ahead of their planning strategy process. They're not gonna fail. And they don't wanna they are fueled by the content that we all create, right? And so they're just trying to organize it and present it in a way that the world is shifting to search for that content. So there's good and bad to it. The good is I feel like the PR folks are about to become the most important marketer in the room just because they have the knowledge, the network, and the ability to place content into other publications at scale. And that's what's becoming really important. And I actually did that at retreat, and we'll get to that in a second. But that's really important because when AI is searching, coming back for results, it's searching the entire internet. So the more points you pop up, the more credible you look. So it's not about keyword searching anymore where you could just like try to rank for a certain keyword in your area or something like that. It's now based off of volume of content that makes you more credible than your competitor. So I'm actually really excited about it because I feel like this is going to reset the playing field. So it's no longer just about ad spend, right? So one of the things that we ran into at retreat is we had a massive competitor in the area. And the reason why I moved on a creator program was because I knew I couldn't outspend them in ad spend, right? And so now with I believe ads will become more relevant again because that's what fuels all these big companies. But I think that there's an opportunity here for smaller folks with less budget to be able to do some really neat things and show up. And the
Yeah.
way that we did that at retreat was I I used PR heavy in my marketing, and so we were sourced in stories with Southern Living and NOLA.com, and we were the up and coming cool new glamping resort, and so I sourced us in stories. And if you were to search up in ChatGPT the top 10 glamping destinations in the Southeast, Retreat shows up. So I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. I was just using really good marketing to be able to show up in more places because that was important even before generative search, and it's just as important now.
Yeah. Well, in a world where credibility drives visibility, how should hoteliers build PR strategies that AI actually notices? I mean, you talked about it already, but I think we should kind of state the obvious.
Well, stating the obvious again, and we could dive into it, but the simple answer is storytelling. One of the things we talked about before is this idea that when you go to book a hotel, the photos are so static, and it's really just focused on price and amenities within the room. So when a traveler is searching and there's 45 hotels to choose from, and all of those hotels say the same thing, have similar photos, it only comes down to price. So I believe that that's why hotels think that they have to adjust their pricing to be in a competitive pricing war, which is a whole other topic, which is very dangerous because there's no story to differentiate themselves. So when I say telling a good story, I mean telling your customer's story and telling it from different angles and starting on social, starting with blogs, starting with showing up in other people's content, right? So, an example I could give to be more specific is we would have a different creator every single week on site for 2 years to drive the demand that that eventually led to the 93% direct bookings. Well, I got to know these creators because I was trying to figure out who do I want to keep working with, who can I invite to come back, whose content's really good, how can I develop these relationships better. So I would get to know them. And one of the creators that I invited back 6 times, she lived in Nashville, and her father had died 2 years before. She had never been married, never had kids. She was in her 40s, and her father was her whole world to her. And so, without me knowing, when we had originally connected for her to come as a creator stay, the property actually helped her do some healing in that process. So as time went on and I got to know her better and her story, I wanted to tell the story. So I ended up asking her if she felt comfortable with sharing her story publicly. And I paid to have a photographer come out and do lifestyle shoot while she was in the cabin. And she talked about the how she felt every time she came on property and what she was able to process due to her father's death when she was on the property, just because of the calmness, how much all the staff took good care of her, looked out for her. So telling those stories are important because every guest has some kind of unique experience and reason for being there, and I feel like that is completely overlooked to the hotel's detriment.
Absolutely. I mean, I think now we can move over to the story selling versus storytelling. Uh, why do you believe travelers trust the creator's story more than the hotel's own polished narrative, which is written by a agency who perhaps doesn't visit, maybe they visit the resort once, they don't even stay overnight, they just do the usual uh, hotel inspection style of visit, and then they walk away, write their story. So, can you share your views on this?
Yes. So, a couple of things from a business marketing standpoint, the trust in the marketplace that consumers have for any company, regardless of whether it's a hotel or a iced tea, the trust level is so low in the marketplace. And there's all kinds of nuances that we're not going to get into the reasons for that, but that's a fact. And so it takes up to 20 touch points from cold to purchase to convince a consumer that this is a good way to spend their money, that they're going to be taken care of, that this is a trusted product to spend their money on or service to spend their money on. So with creators, the statistic is it takes less than 7 touch points for them to make a purchasing decision because they already know the creator. Most of creators have their own audiences and they're connected with those audiences very deeply. So they get to know them personally. They spend their days with them through their Instagram stories or their TikToks. And so they trust them. So when a creator comes out one time and says, "Oh my gosh, I just spent this weekend at this glamping resort. Just watch me here and the things that I do." Like, they don't even I never told them to sell anything. I never told them what to say. I just said, Share your experience." And every experience was different. And because they had already had the trust built within their own communities, we didn't have to do any selling. The trust, the story built the trust that closed the sale.
Yeah. Very good. I mean, but kind of, I'm always wondering about this. What is the reason people get attached to a place they visit? There must be some magic in there. And but I'm also equally wondering why the hotels themselves don't always get it. Why this is? Is it that because they're not asking the questions, or they just kind of trust their own instincts? And so I'm just kind of thinking about all the time this whole relationship between the hotel
Mhm.
guest and the hotel, and I come to the conclusion that it's kind of a relationship building, and it's really the when I talk about return on investment, actually I call it return on relationships, which
Hmm.
actually matters most. Well, what do you think
Yes.
about that?
So this is a tricky one to answer because it's hard to put everybody in the same box, right? Like a
Yeah.
corporate hotel is going to be different than an independent hotel is going to be different than a small resort, right? But I think if I were to find the thread through it all is there's a perception of we need to show up this way because maybe we've done it this way, or maybe because this is how corporate's telling us we need to show up, or maybe we've found some success in this in the past. I don't really know what that is either. I have that question too. But where we found success is we didn't care about any of that. All we did was listen to the customer. So we had a really great customer feedback loop. There was a survey that went out purposely within 2 hours of them checking out because I wanted to get them when they were in their car on their phone. And they were happy and they were relaxing and they had extra time on their hands. And so we got all kinds of feedback and we listened to them. And so that is where our advice came from. That is where, all of the changes we made, all of the upgrades we made to the property, anything that we were missing, we didn't look to the industry. We were listening to that feedback loop from customers. And so I think if companies in general are in the place where they can be agile enough to listen to the customer and make those shifts, they will grow with the customer because the key point, and this is in business across the board, in my opinion, um, we don't change with the culture.
Mm. Yeah.
Culture changes. I mean, since COVID to now, our culture has massively changed. It changes when a president comes on board. It's constantly changing.
Sure.
And so we have to understand what our customers are looking for and be listening to them so we can make those adjustments with them and be relevant to what they want.
Very good. So, the word inclusivity is being talked about, particularly in US. That is a sort of a can be even a sensitive topic. But I thought I'd just ask you, how does
Mhm.
inclusivity in storytelling, showing all backgrounds, cultures, and voices, impact a property's long-term reputation?
So vital. And I have a very close to home example. We actually live in Alabama. So the property was in retreat is in Alabama. And we actually live in a section of Alabama that the country looks at as racist in a way. And that's not so, right? I don't believe that to be so. I live here. I don't see that on a daily basis. Not to say there aren't people who, everywhere that behave badly, but there was an overall sentiment that there are certain people of certain cultures that wouldn't be safe here. And every time one of our creator reels would go viral, it would show up in the comment section. People would say that, like, don't go there, it's not safe. Like, people from different parts of the country didn't even know. And I listened to that. I understood where we're located. I understand that there's a cultural misunderstanding based off of the past. I understood all that and I was empathetic to it. So, I just leaned into that. So I would always comment positively, but I'm like, I can't just comment, I have to prove it. And so, I think part of it happened naturally because I'm the type of person that says yes to everybody once and they get an opportunity to prove themselves or disprove themselves. So any creator that came to me, I said yes to. So we had creators of every size, every nationality, everything. Um, And so over time, just different creators showing up made all sorts of cultures feel like they would be accepted there because they saw somebody else that looked like them. So in marketing, when you're telling a story, you cannot just put the most beautiful person on screen because not everybody looks like that. People have to, part of the trust factor is I can see myself there in that person. That
Yeah,
person looks like me, that person talks like me, that person has the same interests that I do, and that's where you start to, bring down the trust barrier. So it's very important not to think of this idea that everything has to look and sound and be perfect, and that we have to know that the culture that we're in is people are kind of not, they're over that right now. They don't want everything to look and sound perfect. They wanna know, "Am I welcome, safe, trusted there?" Um, and so we
yeah,
that's really important.
very good. Um, Many hotel owners, hotel managers, one of the key position that they need to hire always is the marketer, the hospitality marketer. Uh, I mean, in your personal opinion, obviously, what critical mistakes do hoteliers make when defining the role of a marketing professional? Uh, that job description, it's the copy paste from old standardized job description from a hotel chain, or it could be very vague and so on. Tell me your views on how you see this.
I think that there's a couple of the misconceptions that continue to be very prolific, and this is coming from someone who has been trying to get a job in the space for over 6 months now and having a difficult time. If you could believe it or not, I'm having a major challenge. And so my opinion is a couple of fold. So one, if it's coming from a corporation, there's this idea that you have to speak the language of the corporation that you're in, right? So if Marriott is hiring a marketer, it says it in the job description, must or highly recommend that you speak Marriott, right? I don't speak Marriott. I don't speak Hyatt. I don't speak any corporate language because I have not come up in any of the corporations. So to me, that's putting you in a box, and now you're just pulling from the other people that other hotels have used. So that's not inherently a bad thing. That doesn't mean that those people are not talented. But what it means is if you're having a hard time standing out, how is it hiring somebody within the corporate speak is going to help you stand out in another area, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is data analytics is severely missing from the marketer's toolbox, I think just across the board. So being able to, one, set up and track the proper data to be able to determine what's working and what's not working, and then be able to present that data to leadership to advocate for, we need to stop doing this, we need to start doing this, we need this fund to go over here. There needs to be, the marketer needs to be a leader in their own right that can be the one that brings the information to leadership to help make better decisions. And I'm kind of seeing marketers who are doing similar things over and over again, and they're just kind of checking boxes, and that leadership role is kind of diminishing, which is causing them to lose respect.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it.
Yeah. So, what overlooked qualities separate the marketeer from merely manages channels from one who drives the transformational growth that is needed?
I think networking is a very overlooked quality, because how does networking show up in your database dashboard? As in a presentation to leadership. So I think that that's so important just because of who the marketer brings with them to the role.
Yeah.
Whether that's wisdom or um, resources. I think that that's very overlooked. Also, creativity. Believe it or not, uh, marketing has gotten boring. I'm sure you've noticed that, but like overall, And I'm not just talking about hotels. Marketing has gotten boring. Like, marketers are historically the most creative role in an industry or in any, organization, and it's just not that anymore. So I think someone who has the bravery to be creative and try something, and then that also goes into, like, having video editing skills to be able to, like, make that reel on Instagram, or, the humor to be able to make something funny and land in an interesting way. So I think creativity is also very overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. So, if you were advising an owner today, what unconventional questions should they ask a marketer before hiring them?
I wanna know what somebody's hobby is and how they like to spend their time out of work. I
Oh,
think that that tells a lot about, um, you know, what interests them, because I think what brings the most creativity and the most, like, just getting in there and teamwork and things and trying to figure out problems and stuff like that has to do with how somebody spends their time. So I think that that's a good one. Um, I think that I don't know, I think that that's a really strong one.
yeah,
Yeah.
good. So, let's talk a little bit the content that attracts and converts today's traveler. You seem to be very Instagram savvy, and you know how to push those right buttons. What makes a good Instagram reel, in your opinion?
Travel, it's showing the whole experience. So an example would be, in 2025, it's probably kind of coming off of popularity now, but at the beginning of 2025, cowboy core was one of the hot trends for this year. And when that came out, in January, I, immediately went to our creators and I said, "Who wants a free stay?" Because we had a cabin that was called Yellowstone. It was completely themed out to the Yellowstone show, all cowboy. The local state park actually has horseback riding, and then there's, like, a cowboy-esque winery in the area. So I said, "You need to go here, here, and here, and you need to incorporate it in your entire story," because people wanna know what else they could do there, right? It's one thing to, like, show a beautiful space and, hanging out in the living room and in the hot tub and that kind of thing. But people, when they're traveling, they do that at night or in the morning. The rest of
Yeah,
the day is typically filled up with, like, I'm here to go to this orchard or, do this other thing. So incorporating into the story what else there is to do in the area aligned with upcoming trends is very important.
sure. So, I'm always comparing independent hotels to global brands, and so how can independent hotels compete with global brands through the people first, authentic content?
Easy. Creators, working with creators. I mean, I know we keep talking about it,
Yeah.
but what I've noticed, and I'm not as well versed on the hotel industry as I am, in the short-term rental, which I don't know how much difference there is, so that might be showing my ignorance a little bit, but,
Oh, it's okay.
um, the, this idea that creators come and go and they want this one creator, maybe they could have one creator a quarter or something like that, and they want the creator to fuel the rest of the quarter. Like, this one creator should be able to fuel. Well, the way that content works and the way that people digest content, or miss content, you have to have a constant flow of different stories, right? Back to people who look differently, who are different shapes and sizes and sexes, and, there has to be this story always hitting. And
Yeah,
so when you work with creators, and a constant cadence, that's where you are able to compete because that story is always going out in a different perspective.
yeah. So I think every hotel would like to have this uh, content that goes viral. But in your
Yes.
view, what's the single biggest mistake hotels make when trying to go viral?
That's funny. I have a LinkedIn post coming up about this.
Okay, so
Yeah.
watch that space.
Yeah, because, one of the biggest headaches that marketers have that we kind of laugh about is we're always asked to make something go viral. It's just
Yeah.
kind of like an industry thing, and it's like, "Oh, make that go viral." And so, shortly before I left retreat, the owner was like, "Can you just, like, make us go viral?" And I was like, at first I was irritated, and I, did the marketer thing, and I, like, complained about it a little bit, and I'm like, "What the heck?" And then the next morning I thought, "This is a really great challenge. Why can't I do this? I should be able to do this." So it became my goal to make one reel go viral, and I actually succeeded. And 2 weeks before I left, the reel that I made hit 1 million views. So I accomplished the goal. But I say all that to say it is very challenging.
Yeah.
I had been at retreat for 2 years, making very similar reels to the one that went viral, and you just don't know. You
Mm.
don't know how combination of this and that is going to hit. So I always say everything that you should put out should be the best that you possibly can, right? But you don't know how it's going to be perceived by the market, right? I
Right.
mean, we've seen the opposite of that, and a lot of mistakes happen in brands because they're trying to do something audacious and it just does not hit, right?
Yeah.
So, this idea that we can just make it go viral, it's absolutely false. But the idea that you can create an environment for things to go viral is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And we had 5 creators go viral during our 2 years. And then I had the one that I did at the end, and I probably made over 250 reels during my time there.
Wow.
So it's not something you can force, and if you try to force it, that's what makes it even harder to go viral. But if you have an environment of just being creative and trying stuff out, that's where you're going to end up hitting virality at some point.
So if you had to choose between a polished brand content and raw creator-driven stories, which would you bet on? Why?
Number 2.
Okay.
No, number 2, because I just know consumers too well. And right now in our culture, consumers are over the perfect. They don't trust it at all. Not to say that you can't have a polish to the way you do things, but the polished corporate just, I feel like I would be fighting. It's a losing battle
Yeah,
at this time in our culture. It's a losing battle.
sure. So let's talk about a little bit about this because you have a lot of experience. I'm always curious to kind of get your views, like sort of common mistakes in branding and visibility. Uh, in your opinion, why do so many hotels and hotel owners misjudge who their real customer actually is?
Market research.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. This is a whole podcast on its own, probably. Like the amount of money spent on market research to say, here are your avatars. Um, I think, and this is kind of back to the AI conversation, synthetic data is starting to become very visible, and people are really starting to, what is synthetic data? How do I use this? And I think in about 5 to 10 years from now, um, the use of synthetic data will be saving us so much money and giving us so much clarity in marketing that we're going to look back in embarrassment of how much money we spent in marketing, to have some big agency come and tell us these are your two avatars, and maybe they were at one time, or maybe they make up a subset of the customer base, but that is not in totality. And I think the idea that we focus in so heavily on like these two avatars and not take an understanding that people are fluid and dynamic, just the way they think, like even what they like. Like sometimes somebody wants to go to a cabin in the middle of the woods, with no electricity, and sometimes someone wants to go to Scotland and stay in a high-end castle, right? Like those are two very different people, if you will, two very different avatars, but really they're the same person, right?
yeah,
So not yeah, this amount of spend on market research, the time it takes to get back that research, just to say, okay, this is where I need to focus when culture is changing all around us. I think it's a big mistake.
Yeah. So, what does it say about the industry that we are, so to speak, drowning in data, yet few operators know how to use it?
I think it's everybody's problem,
Yeah.
really. I think it's more than just an industry problem. I think data makes us, as people, I think it makes us feel safe and comfortable that we could just tap into information at any time and get a really clear answer. But that's not true. And we're drowning in it because we're not setting the right benchmarks and tracking those benchmarks over time so that we have to actually know the answer. Um, Not the answer. We need to know the question we want answered before we go diving into the data, and we need to set those benchmarks and track them. So I think it's an illusion that we think because we have so much data, we could just tap into it and get the answer we want at any time. Where I only know a little bit about this because my husband is a data scientist, and the amount of work he does on a daily basis to like comb through data, to scrub it, to just to get the answers that people are asking. So you have to know that stuff before, track that so that you're tracking your KPIs. And there's not a lot of forethought that goes into it. It's just this trust that the data's there and we'll access it at some point in time.
Yeah. So, how should the owners approach data driven decisions without losing the human element of hospitality?
So I think it's really simple. If they haven't caught the trend yet, I like to keep things very simple but effective. Um, I think it's the idea of knowing what it is you're trying to achieve, right? So I've worked under the EOS system, which is the entrepreneurial operations system, and it's a whole system on knowing beforehand, the year, the quarter prior, what it is you're trying to accomplish so you know what to track. So really understanding what it is you want to know, the data doesn't have to be on the human side, right? The data is internal. The data is to be used and um, proved and monitored internally. The customer shouldn't feel any of that, right? So when somebody's taking a survey, right, that's a data point, it should feel like the brand. It should talk in the brand's voice, the survey, even the questions should be fun and in the brand's voice. Like the customer shouldn't feel any of the data. They should just feel like they're interacting with the brand in a way that's relevant to the brand's voice. The data is for the internal team because, you know, if I were to work for, a corporate Marriott or something, they probably would have never let me do what I did at Retreat, and that's okay, I understand that, but I know that as a marketer. So, the second I started working at Retreat, I set benchmarks, and I tracked
Yes.
them all for 2 years. That's how I even know I have the results that I got because I had access to all the data to track all that. Um, but that wasn't for me. So on the customer facing, they just saw the fun reels and the storytelling side of things, and the data was showing me it's all working. And I knew that because we were averaging about 5 to 600 new leads a month through a coupon code pop up on our website. We had an 34% conversion rate, and most of those conversions happened within 18 hours of somebody downloading the coupon code. So all of those were part of the KPIs, right? We
Yeah.
need to know what our conversion rate is for anything that we're doing. And to have a 34% conversion rate is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
that's how I advocated for things because now I had all these benchmarks and I was able to say, this is what we accomplished this month doing this. This is working. We need to keep doing this. We need to keep, up in the budget here. And it was always approved because I had that feedback loop.
Yeah. So, if you could wave a wand and correct one branding mistake across the entire industry, I
Mhm.
mean, hospitality industry, what would it be?
First of all, you have to have a brand. So
Okay.
understanding what the brand is really important, just because you say this is our brand doesn't mean that that's a relatable brand, first of all. But second would be the brand doesn't have to show up everywhere. I really think that that's a big mistake. Like, you do not have to put your logo on everything. You do not have to have everything look and sound the same everywhere. Like, the brand should feel more human and has several sides to it.
Very
So this
good. Yeah.
idea that slapping a logo on everything is creating the brand, I think is I would like to see that go away.
Yeah. And plus, brand is also like the the experience and the memories people bring with
Mhm.
them, and that's these are that they can relate to, and it's not just a sticker somewhere. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an excellent conversation, Sarah, and you're giving a lot of input and a lot of advice. And I think this is valuable information for the viewers and the listeners of this podcast who are in the hotel industry. But I have two more questions for you before we wrap up. One question is that I like to ask all my guests, and besides what we have talked about, what are the trends do you see happening in the hospitality that hoteliers should take note of?
There's a lot of upset going on right now with how the OTAs are shifting their business models. Um, so there's this idea of less reliance on OTAs. But what does that look like? There's a lot of question like, what does that look like, and how do we replace that, and can we replace that? So I think that that's a big trend to be looking at. Not only how hotels are adjusting, but like actually what the OTAs are doing. You
Yeah,
know, one particular is very interesting to me is what Airbnb just did. So historically, a host would pay 3% to earn that Airbnb guest to stay with them, and the guest would pay Airbnb 15.5%. Well, the 15.5% as of October 27th is going to be shifted to the host. And the guest is no longer paying that. And so that's interesting. But if we take this to the hotel space, around the same time that that announcement came out, Airbnb says they're going after hotels. Um, Well, I mean, we all know that their commercials last year just completely annihilated and made hotels look and like an embarrassing place to stay.
yeah,
So how they're going to do that with this huge fee jump, because basically they now cost the same as Booking.com with nearly hardly the same benefits. So I think that how the OTAs are adjusting right now and not in the benefit of the host, is really interesting to see how this is gonna unfold.
yeah. Interesting. I mean, it's interesting that how Airbnb see that they are the biggest competitors for them is the hotels. And then hotels are very resisting in many ways. They're saying, "Oh, we have to put like here in Finland, there has not been the taxation or the value-added tax on Airbnb like on
Oh,
hotels." So I'm
oh,
saying that, well, look, you have a very different product than Airbnb, which is an apartment most of the time, and it has a kitchenette, and that's what it is. But in hotels, you have all kinds of facilities that Airbnb cannot physically provide. So take advantage of how do you use your lobby, for instance, and do something more with this area, and that makes people want to not only be there to wait on the way out or in, but it's a social space that you need to take advantage of, and that's what Airbnb doesn't have. Except, of
yeah,
course, there's some very smart ones that are using Airbnb, and then they promote all the small restaurants in the neighborhood. I
hmm.
call them their restaurants. So there are many ways of doing all these things. But yeah, thanks. That's a very interesting input. But so, I mean, lastly, if people are interested to find out more about your activities, how can they reach you?
The easiest way is by going to my website, sarahstahl.com, and I'm very active on LinkedIn as well, so those are 2 of the quickest ways to reach out and learn more about me.
Very good. Well, Sarah, I really appreciate that you have joined us today, and I think we really need to consider another episode and kind of dig into another hot topic. I'm really curious what's happening in 2026. So I think
Yes.
I would welcome you to join us another time.
Great, I would love that.
Thank you for tuning in to the Social Hotelier. If you enjoy this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated. We have an incredible lineup of guests coming our way, so stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations. Until next time, take care and keep exploring.